would benefit significantly from this discussion on the value of parental support to entrepreneurial development in the Caribbean. We have joining us this evening, Miss Carol Toppin. Now, Carol, she's first and foremost, I can tell you, a mother. She will tell you that I am a mother. And we're going to be engaging in the first 20 minutes or so on a conversation with Carol on this whole business of entrepreneurship and the impact that her parents had on her in the early stages of her career and development. Carol is a radio broadcaster for over 19 years, and recently she has been hosting some television shows. She's also the founder of 40 Plus and Phenomenal, and she's phenomenal. These movements are motivational movements for ladies. And she says that there are movements that motivate ladies in their fine wine season. I like that, Carol. I really like that. In their fine wine season. As well, 40 Plus and Phenomenal mentors young women and support female entrepreneurs through seminars, opportunities to earn income and social activities. She's also the founder of CMT Media and Events, and she brings to the table this evening a wealth of media marketing events and such like experience. And she's also really an amazing personality as an individual. And I've said to Carol on so many occasions how impact I have been by her own broadcasting on radio and the impact that she leaves on lives. As well, she's the director of fundraising for the Precious Touch Foundation, an amazing charity that grants wishes to children with life-threatening illnesses in Barbados. Her motto is God first, love people, and be true to self. And we're going to be talking to Carol very shortly. As well, we have with us Ms. Cardell Ferguson, and Cardell is the general manager of the Barbados Youth Business Trust in Barbados. She's also a visionary and regional coordinator of the social enterprise incubators operating in Barbados, Dominica, and St. Lucia, and the acting managing director of Gen Barbados. She's also a multi-talented Caribbean national with years of experience in business development, training, finance, and marketing. She currently dedicates much of her time and attention to working with and supporting businesses and entrepreneurs in various aspects of business development and training. Cardell, I know for a fact, she's a social enterprise specialist and almost, some person may say, a social enterprise junkie. She loves social enterprises and has worked very closely with building these out over several years. She holds a bachelor's degree with honors in computer science and management and a master's in business administration with a focus on international marketing, communications, brands, and relationships. As well, she's a certified management accountant with specializations in strategic leadership, and she's a trained social enterprise development specialist and ISO 20700 certified management consultant. And we are so very happy to have Cardell joining us for this conversation. As well, we are delighted to welcome from the beautiful island of Dominica, Julie Ann Charles. Julianne is a finance enthusiast and evangelist with an extensive track record of excellence in academia, leadership and development, and business development. She has a bachelor's degree in economics and accounting from the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus and is a certified member of the Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists. Her experience in banking and accounting has afforded her a strong foundation in professional work. She is renowned as an exceptional team player and meticulous worker across various networks, from work in church and to her country and to her regional community. She pursues her mission to be a support system providing youth with optimal assistance in financial planning and overall business support as the Enterprise Development Officer at the Dominica Youth Business Trust. As well, we have Fabian Isaac, and we are delighted to have Fabian, who hails from St. Lucia, and St. Lucia will be celebrating its 44th birthday tomorrow, and we say happy independence to St. Lucia. Fabian is an expert in the field of microfinance with 19 years experience in conducting business management training, MSME business support, and providing business advisory services. He has delivered a wide range of training programs, workshops, and seminars funded by international donor agencies, including the Commonwealth Secretariat, USAID, International Youth Foundation, the German Savings Bank, and the European Union. He holds a BSc in Management Studies from the University of the West Indies and is a competency-based education and training trainer of the trainer. Let's get that right. He's also a Caribbean Vocational Qualifications Assessor and a CVQ internal and external verifier. He has been using his vast experience in recent years as the coordinator of the St. Lucia Youth Business Trust, which is a subsidiary of the St. Lucia Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture. And I'm delighted to welcome them to be a part of this conversation. And I am Jerry Blenman, the Executive Director of the Caribbean Center for Organizational Excellence, an entity that's devoted to driving the importance of excellence across the Caribbean in our Caribbean institutions. We are very gung-ho on the value of excellence to the development of the region. And our operation started just 10 years ago, in 2013, and we have been serving both in Barbados and across the Caribbean. So that's us for this evening's conversation, and we are delighted to welcome those of you who have joined us thus far. This evening's conversation is important. It's important for a number of reasons. And those reasons we believe will materialize as we continue this conversation this evening. We want to encourage you as we discuss to feel free to leave any comments, to raise any questions. No questions are out of the way as it relates to this particular conversation. And let's have, a great conversation regarding this very important subject matter. So some important questions that we need to ask ourselves as we move to having a conversation specifically with Carol initially, and then open to the panel. Is parental support missing but valuable component to youth enterprise development? Is it? To what extent does it or has it played a role in driving entrepreneurial ventures? Are there major benefits to be derived from parental support for business startups among young entrepreneurs, and what could these be? And is there value to establishing financial and functional measures for defining parental inputs to youth enterprises and the resulting impacts on socio-economic development? These are just some of the questions that we are going to be considering this evening. And I will invite Carol to have a private conversation while the panelists relax. They can probably close their cameras as we have this, little intimate discussion with Carol. And this conversation with Carol, as I said at the outset, emerged from our event Allies for Excellence, which was hosted just about a month or so ago, when she shared a little about the importance of her parents in helping her to enter the world of business and to be involved in setting up her own enterprise, etc. Carol, tell us a little about that.
Well, I'd have to go based on my father's story primarily. My father like to tell us when he had time, because my father was an entrepreneur back in the 60s. And he grew up in a little village called Mellows Hill in St. Joseph, right here in Barbados. And even though Barbados is considered flat, if you ever went to Mellows Hill, you literally had to go down a hill, right down into the bottom, and it was not easy to get out of Mellows Hill. So it seemed like Barbados was not flat at all when I was a child. Well, he grew up in that region. My father grew up very poor. My father spoke of not having shoes. He spoke of, having his siblings. His father was a preacher, and that was basically his life. His mom used to, back in the day, she would try to make things in order to sell and make a living. I think there were 8 of them. So that was quite a lot of children coming from the country, not being wealthy. My father's father died very young. He was in his late 40s when he died. So then it was just all of those siblings plus his mother, and my father always talked about having this sense of responsibility where his siblings and in particular his mom was concerned. And that drove him to push and do better and see more and be more. And he spoke of occasions where, seeing his mother struggling to make ends meet and wanting to bring her out of that situation as much as he could, and bring his siblings as much as he could, bring them along and help them out of the struggle. So I would say that my father's sense of entrepreneurship started out of poverty, and then basically was fueled by the necessity to survive when his father died very young. They were always encouraged to do things. You keep a few animals here or there, and you had to take care of those animals. So he always had that work ethic, getting up in the morning early in order to assist his father at the time. And then when dad was gone, then he had to assist his mother. And that pushed him to want to be more and want to have more. And he didn't want to be without shoes. He didn't want his siblings to be without shoes. He didn't want to see his mother climbing Mellows Hill all the time with this weight of whatever she had to bake or mix or make in order to go out and sell for them to survive. And that is the one thing my father kept talking about that fueled him. He spoke so often of sitting down and crying because he wanted a way out for his mother and his siblings. So out of poverty and out of necessity, a fire started in my father. I don't even know if he realized what that was at the time, but looking back and sitting down and when he was alive, because my father's been gone now 16 years, when he told the stories, as I got older and I got more mature, I realized, wow, that was a spark. The spark, whatever it was, out of tragedy, there was that spark that helped to ignite something that fueled him to keep going. And my father also had a passion for feeding people. And that came out of a lack as well, because there wasn't much food around.
Wow.
So he had this thing about feeding people. I remember him telling me a story about some man. I cannot remember the man's name, but anyhow, he went to this man's house for some reason, and this man had a big bowl of food in front of him, and he ate this food and he didn't share it. And my father said in his head, he was thinking, I have to be able to feed myself, feed my mother, feed my siblings. And when I get older, I am never going to let anybody go hungry. My father was a feeder. He was a feeder.
Wow.
And if most people in Barbados will know the bakery, Nichols Bakery. My father was the late Harold Kenneth Nichols, H.K. Nichols as people used to call him. And that is a part of the entrepreneurial fire that was ignited and birthed and became something big. It's still around, and my father's gone.
Yeah.
Still around. When my father moved to Antigua.
And that's an important point. It is still around. And
yes.
I'm going to pick you up on that. It is still around. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. My father moved to Antigua. He spent 10 years in Antigua, and that is actually where he first tried out baking. He had a bakery in Antigua. So there's a part of because myself and my last two brothers, we're the last stop, so we didn't know anything about that. But he started a business. He left Barbados, moved to Antigua, started his own business of bakery, and did that for 10 years. So that's another thing that I don't think a lot of, even our family, because it was just a part of, yeah, you would hear that. He talked about Antigua and little things that he learned. But that was huge to get up, leave Barbados, go to Antigua, settle with a young family, because some of my older siblings were born in Antigua, and start a business, very successful business, decide that he wanted to move home, came back and started Nichols Bakery in 1969, I think it was. And one of the things about entrepreneurship, especially when you came, you have to think about this. He came from a legacy of poverty, not having much. But when you think about his mother, my grandmother, even baking or making mabi or whatever, she was an entrepreneur without knowing it.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, you made a very important point that the birth of his business, which started, and I noted it here in 1969.
In Barbados in 1969.
In Barbados in 1969, that was born out of poverty and necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost heard that it was tied to his mom, who he had, witnessed experiencing difficulty.
Yes.
And I thought I also heard that it was tied to the community, where he also saw issues of hunger and such like. So there was a connection between the commencement of his business and the community, as well as the family. Yes. And I want us to explore that, especially when the panel join us, because that's extremely important. And this experience of leaving the country, gaining the knowledge, and then coming back into the country to use that knowledge to help support his family is of extreme importance. How did that impact upon you? Did you at all had a sense that Nichols Bakery, that all of us have bought bread from, did you have at all a sense that this was going to become an enterprise that is still existing today?
By the time I came along, bearing in mind I was born in 1971, by the time I came along, with his experience coming from Antigua, he came and basically just started over again, but he had that experience. So he hit the ground running. And by the time I was aware of myself, I don't think I understood, because I was born dusted in flour, as I say. I was born dusted. It's all we knew. But at that time, my father was not just restricted to a bakery. He had a dairy farm. And he also was heavily into agriculture, because he believed in the land. He believed in being able to find ways to use what you have around you in order to support people. He loved anything to do with food. Remember, I talked about that experience before. My father spoke about that experience of that man not giving him anything for years, as a catalyst that pushed him to use the land to be able to feed others. He was always talking about the importance of giving to others and giving back. He left a legacy of givers as well. There was hardly a church back in the day that did not go to Nichols Bakery for their annual harvest. When harvests were a big thing, my father would give and give. They would come to the house where we were at. It was actually a plantation at the time. They would get whatever fruit or vegetable was in season. They would get milk, because he had a dairy farm. And he had that legacy of giving, because he was a very hard worker, but he always said, you should never be too busy, or you should never be too big. not to give to people.
Correct.
And that's something that really stuck with me. But he was, I think as a child, I saw my father as almost a robot. He
Wow.
got up, he was a very strict disciplinarian, very, very strict disciplinarian. And he would get up every day at the same time. He would get up, he would have a hot drink, he would head out to work, make sure everything at the dairy farm and with the agriculture and the other produce where we were was fine, head on down to the bakery, and he could be there for 12, 13 hours, come home late and start that process over and over and over again. And one of the things that I learned from him was discipline.
Yeah.
Get up, get moving. My father used to tell me, on time is half an hour before your appointment.
Yeah.
Early is an hour
Wow.
before your appointment. Get up, don't give up. Things don't get done when you stay down. Things don't get done when you lie down. You have to keep pushing. You have to keep knocking on doors. Because of his experience where he came from, he was not expected to succeed in anything. That is something that should be noted.
Yes, yes, yes. Tell me
So,
something. But
mhm,
yeah, and I mean, I'm here hearing about daddy, but how about mommy?
yes.
Because I know that age was the age when a lot of mummies stayed at home and kept home and such like. And what about the role that she played?
Oh, when you put the two of them together, I don't think we slept very often past 6 o'clock in the morning. It didn't happen because they were both hard workers. And my mom now, her story, I mean, she grew up on the other side. She was in St. John, and my mother was working from 13 years old.
Wow.
My mother worked back in the day, you'll call it a domestic. That was her first job. She used to work in the Belleville area, which is not too far from where I am. My mother spoke about getting up to go to work, and you weren't able to walk through the Belleville area after 6 o'clock as a beautiful dark-skinned child, because at 13 you're just a child. She was always working. My mom is a fantastic cook, and that is where she spread her wings in entrepreneurship, because she worked as a maid for a lot of years. And a good friend of her, they became good friends afterwards, said to her, Hazel, you're an amazing cook. Why don't you just open your own? At that time, it was called a snack it. And she started it in the Clapham area. That was in Clapham, in St. Michael. Before Clapham had a lot of houses, there used to be cows and shack trees. My mother had a snack it, and she started to cook. And that is where she really came into her own, when she realized, well, wow, I'm envisioning it as a adult now, what probably was happening through her head. All
Yes.
those years I was working, but I had this power in my hands. But because of what society expected you to do and to be, you weren't expected to succeed. You just weren't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think one of the things I admired about her as well is that whole just keep going, keep going. Sometimes she would still have a job. She would cook on weekends, whether it was put in sows, she would bake sweet bread. She was amazing in the kitchen. And my mom was also an entrepreneur. Of course, that meant nothing to me as a child. All I knew was that I would have tasty things to eat from my mom's kitchen, and I would go up to the bakery and eat as much bread as I want from my dad's job. But the beauty of that, now looking back, was seeing two people who, by society standards, were not supposed to make much of themselves, and how they fought. They fought against everything that threatened to pull them apart and pull them down, and fought to become the best they could be at that time.
Right.
Discipline and that constant movement. Even you put it in today's context, a lack of greater education, because they could not go to school. After a time, my father had to stop. I think he stopped at 15, stop school in order to take care of his family.
But 54 years later,
It's amazing.
54 years later,
It is
that
amazing.
business that you saw as the base for you probably getting your turnovers and salt bread, etc. 54 years later, that is still in existence.
Yes.
And there was a mummy who was there also helping to drive this. Now, you also own your own private company providing marketing, media, and other services, and you run two excellent foundations, the 40 Plus Phenomenal, and the other one is
She's phenomenal.
She's phenomenal. And I know that these are fantastic foundations. I think I probably shared on 2 occasions with those women at some.
Yes, you did.
Yes, and really excellent. Did that have an impact upon you? Did their lives at the time have an impact to the extent that it encouraged you to take the risk to be an entrepreneur as well?
Of course. And by nature, I think by nature, seeing my parents struggle so much in the past, but still do well, there was a part of me that wanted the comfort of going into a job, getting a salary, and being okay with that, so I didn't have to think about it. But I think there's almost something genetic where entrepreneurship comes in. There's something in the DNA from both my mother and my father where all of us ended up doing something. Even if we had a steady job, all of us had or have a side hustle, which is entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And I think one of the most important things that both of my parents taught me was discipline.
Yes.
Get up and do what you have to do. My father was a man who also believed in integrity. Let your yes be yes, let your no be no. When you make a promise, keep that promise. Do everything you can do in order to fulfill that promise. Both of my parents were very high on customer service. People may not think that making pudding and sauce and having a tiny snack it back in the day, where it tend to be very community focused, that because most people see people come, they laugh and blah, blah, blah. My mother was very, very strict on how you serve people, how you speak to people, how you set food before people, making people feel happy. My father was very good and really strict on that customer service as well. Your customers were to be treated well as much as possible. You try to build some kind of connection with them, because my father he used to say to me, there will be other bakeries, but there'll only be one Nichols bakery.
Wow.
Because when they come, they're to know me by name. I will know them by name. They will come and say, Nick, this, Mr. Nick, that. I have a problem. I can't pay. I can't, da-da-da. There'll be other bakeries, but there'll be only one Nichols bakery. And the difference would be my customer service, the way I treat people.
Wow.
And that's true.
And and what you pointed to were some very important values: discipline, timeliness, excellence in service. These are all really important values for persons who are engaging in any form of business. Indeed, they are very important soft skills for life that should not be ignored. We have Cardell, Fabian, and Julianne with us, and I'm going to invite them to join us, because what you've done, Carl, is set the tone for a really great conversation on the value of parental support to entrepreneurial development in the Caribbean. And it is really useful that your dad went to Antigua and got the required know-how, so to speak. It was not an education, it was a know-how with respect to baking bread, and came back to Barbados and set up his operation. And so, it is really great that we have, Julianne out of Dominica, Fabian from St. Lucia, Cardell, who is from the Caribbean. That's the only way I can put Cardell, Grenadian by birth, living in Barbados, but traversing the Caribbean. And each of you would have seen in your own respective roles given that you work directly with young people, this thirst for entrepreneurship. Tell us, I mean, and maybe you can get the ball rolling for us, Cardell. Well, when we talk about entrepreneurship, within the context of the conversation that Carol and I, have been having, what are we really talking about? Because Carol gave a definition for entrepreneurship that some people probably may not even have the slightest, sense of relationship to. And that definition was someone who is disciplined, committed to customer service. What was the other one, Carol? Disciplined, committed to customer service, and...
As I speak off the cuff and don't remember what I said.
Integrity.
Yes,
and integrity.
Yes.
Thank you, Fabian. And integrity. That was her definition of entrepreneurship that she saw. But as a practitioner working with entrepreneurs, Cardell, I mean, when we talk about entrepreneurship, what are we talking about?
Well, when we're talking about entrepreneurship in the most traditional sense, as practitioners supporting entrepreneurs, we see entrepreneurship as those persons who are willing to take the risk to start and run successful businesses. Now, so we separate entrepreneurship from self-employment, from other aspects of business, because we are starting to talk about that innate feeling that you get when you want to try to build something that is greater than yourself. You see yourself going beyond where you currently are and using the skills that you have to develop something that can help you and future generations. So it's taking that risk. A lot of the times we see people starting businesses as a hustle. Yeah. And a lot of the times they stay at that stage. And so that's where we use that as a delimiter for whether or not you are a small business owner or an entrepreneurship. So you see, a lot of the times entrepreneurs start with a thirst, and it comes from something within their past that force them, and sometimes it's like a calling, right, Carol? And it brings you to that point where you want to make a difference in the world in which you live in. And so that is where we like to see those persons as entrepreneurs. We have been supporting across the board, and a lot of the times you will get the definition getting muddled in the definition of what we call entrepreneurs. And everybody is an entrepreneur if they decide to start something on their own. But let's be true to our definition and true to what Carol started us off with, and see it as someone who is disciplined, yes, who has taken the risk to start something, and who see this thing through the next level because they want to see something grow that is greater than themselves.
Yes. You want to add anything to that, Julie?
Well, I definitely agree with Cardell's point in that an entrepreneur is definitely someone who would take a risk into not just doing a business or participating in some sort of venture, but really identifying a need in society and doing what it is that they know that they can to address that need. It is bringing their own ideas to life so that they can say, okay, this is what I brought. This is what I can do to impact my community. This is how I am changing my society for the betterment of the people that I can reach, whether it is within my country, within the region. So that is essentially what we strive to promote as entrepreneurship. It's not just starting another small business, but it's really what have you seen as a need in your environment, and what are you taking toward, or what are you doing to address that, or to mitigate any sort of social problem that you may have identified, what it is that you're doing to transform your society for the betterment of persons who are around you.
Now taking those definitions into consideration, is it fair to say that parents and friends should have a sense of nervousness when their young children say, look, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to set up a particular operation and I want to run a business? Because guess what? You guys just say that entrepreneurship is about a risk. And I'm certain I heard Carol pointing to the fact that her dad took a few hits along the way. You know, Fabian, do you want to weigh in on that? Because you see, when we talk about parental support for entrepreneurial development in the Caribbean, it has to be taken in the context of the fact that it makes some parents nervous. And I'll tell you, I grew up in Barbados with parents saying to children who were interested in entrepreneurship, go and look for a job. Go and look for a job. I am delighted that my mom, and today she would have been celebrating her birthday, and I honor her on this day because she poured a lot into me. And I'll say a little more about that as time rolls on. But Fabian, should parents be a bit afraid of this whole thing of entrepreneurship?
Okay, so in terms, the very nature of entrepreneurship is that you will be faced with obstacles, will come in your way, you will be faced with challenges. All entrepreneurs face those things. So as yes, you're afraid that your child getting involved in entrepreneurship, but that's what it is. That's what the nature of entrepreneurship. That's what you must overcome. So if you have that burning desire, and that's what everybody was saying, Carol, Cadel, Julian, you have a burning desire to achieve a certain set of personal goals. So that fuel, that fire Carol was speaking about, that's what will propel you into doing that. So as parents, we have to try to encourage that passion and let our children embrace the fact that they will make mistakes along the way, but is how they bounce back from those downturns will determine the type of entrepreneur they will become and how successful they will be. And all of that, learning from mistakes is one of the key components of being a successful entrepreneur. And but if you look at all the rich ones, they have been in businesses that have failed, but they never gave up because of that passion, because of that burning desire.
But you know, for a regular family, when you talk about young people getting into entrepreneurship and family support, it means that the capital, the seed capital, is probably coming from the family as well. Shouldn't that be a concern? I mean, any of you can weigh in on that. Shouldn't that? Yes, go ahead.
I want to jump in here and just let this be known, right? I had two parents who were both entrepreneurs in their own right. My mother was the one who was very, very skeptical of entrepreneurship. She was the one who would say, get a job. And it wasn't, I don't think she ever thought that her children were failures or would fail. She was afraid of failure. And she saw how difficult it was for her, because anybody who's into cooking then and now, it was probably a bit easier in her day than it is now when it's into food and all the different types of things that people do. You're afraid. Parents are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, even though we like to fool our children that we are. And she was the one who was very, very fearful. So I think there's a part of the entrepreneur, that entrepreneurial spirit that, as I said, it's in people's DNA. People who are entrepreneurs, it's just something in them that drives them. You have to be very careful to guard your ears. Even friends and family can be the death of potentially really fantastic businesses, not because they don't care, it's because they're operating from a place of fear, and they're also operating from a place where the vision is not theirs. The vision wasn't given to them, so they can't see what you can see. And sometimes even as an entrepreneur, you can't see 10 steps ahead. You just know, you feel this burning that this thing is for you. Whether you started a business out of desperation, whether you started like so many out of COVID. Look what COVID has done as it relates to entrepreneurship internationally. We have people who never put a pinky toe because they had their jobs, but then they had to come out and really stretch themselves and say, well, hey, this is what it is. I want to share something that I heard. I don't remember it verbatim, but it really resonated with me as a mother as well, as a mother and as the child of Harold and Hazel. TD Jakes said something that shook my world. I heard it just a year and a half ago. It's not what you leave for your child that matters. It's what you leave in your child.
Wow.
Because if you leave everything to your child or for your child, they will just go through it. But if you leave what you deposit in them is something great and something special, and you teach them certain values, they can fend for themselves even if you have nothing to leave for them. So don't worry about the for, worry about what's in.
Yeah.
The legacy. What are you left deposited in them that will give them the push to keep fighting even after you're gone?
Yeah.
That is key.
That's
I would
what I
just like to add there, I remember from you just speaking earlier, Carol, that you said that even sometimes, we don't see or we don't help young people in realizing their entrepreneurial potential because society really tries to define what course person should take, in order to succeed. And, during my time at high school and even in my undergrad, many of my peers would share with me that they were pursuing things that they themselves had no passion for, but it's because, their parents are afraid of them pursuing something else that may not be stable, and they themselves may even sometimes face the issue where parents actually try to transfer their own goals onto the young persons, and because of that they miss the opportunity to really nurture whatever it is, that talent that they may have. It may be in cooking, it may be in art, just because that parents feel that, their ideas may be better. It may lead to a more stable course for their careers. And right there, you stifle the potential of that young person. And so sometimes I don't even blame them because, I know for persons, parents who would have born in the 60s or before that, they may not have had as much as opportunities that we have right now. And so they're really trying to, let their own goals that they might have had at that stage be brought onto their child and see it grow and be birthed through their child. And that's why I feel that sometimes entrepreneurial potential is stifled in our young people.
Yes.
And as a parent, I would like to also add that the reason that sometimes parents would do some things like that is because they're trying to protect their children. And it's like, one thing I need to leave with you is your ability to provide for yourself. And a lot of the times, as Carol would have said earlier, we don't see the vision of what is happening. So we cannot see it because it's not planted within us. And so sometimes you have to let them feel, because in football or in sports, a lot of the times you said that you learn more by failing than you do by winning. Yeah. And so sometimes we have to give people the opportunity to fail at something in order for them to learn the skills that they need to succeed.
Yeah. And that's interesting because again, it's just pointing to the shift that probably needs to take place regarding the wider family involvement in entrepreneurial ventures. In other words, I'm going to throw myself into this venture with my child, or as a family member, I'm going to be a part of this, but I'm going to be a part of it conscious of the fact that there will be failure points, there will be failure
along the way, yes.
That's right. And this is all part of the journey. But let's face facts, guys. This has not been part of our orientation to, like, we were not necessarily inducted into life with this idea of becoming entrepreneurs. We were inducted into life with the idea of being employees. Now, we do a question that is popping up in that regard, which begs the question, and maybe you can take this one first, Fabian. Are families with high income more likely to encourage their children to pursue opportunities for entrepreneurship compared to lower income families? And if so, why?
In terms of the higher income, I do believe that a lot of those families they will provide support, but when it comes to financial, they don't really want to provide financial support. They're kind of skeptical when it comes to that aspect of things. And the high income earners themselves, maybe they don't see, if they're not involved in entrepreneurship, they would basically, like some of the panelists have mentioned, channel the children into avenues where it's more academical and not business related. And when it comes to the lower income families, it's kind of, they don't have the means to support the children financially. But what I'm also seeing is that, and just from the time you presented that topic, what I realized was lacking a lot, that whole parental support in a St. Lucian context. It's really not there.
Yeah.
When I try to thinking about it, looking for the examples, I couldn't get many from all of the programs that I have done. And I've been doing that for 19 years, to be honest. So that's why, to me, it's critical that it's part we have in that conversation, and it should form part of all programs that we have the parents involved.
And have the parents involved to what extent?
To provide support and all, to provide support. So
financial support,
emotional support, encourage the passion, embrace the ideas, let them be independent decision makers, set an example for them.
Yeah. I want to ask another question, and this is a bit provocative, because I in my sphere of business, I'm of the view that there seems to be a trend of more females engaging in entrepreneurship than males. And my question is, from your vantage point, this is just from your vantage point. You heard me, I said it's from your vantage point. From your vantage point, what do you think is the problem there? Is it the home? Is it that the construct of the home has been paying more attention to encouraging? I don't know. I mean, from your vantage point, you're the guys that are practically involved on a day-by-day basis, or is it that there are more programs for driving entrepreneurship among females as opposed to males, from your perspective? I know I'm touching a little bit of a
let me start off, Jerry. Let me start off.
Yes.
So from my vantage point, let's keep it from the vantage point.
From the vantage point.
I am of the opinion that we are seeing more females in business because females are more likely to go out and seek help to start their businesses. That is not necessarily the situation that male are not doing businesses. Because of necessity, most males have to find a way to generate revenue to take care of themselves and their future families. So a lot of the times the male may not have as much leeway to start their own business as a way of generating revenue, because the societal expectations of male are different to that of females.
Is that in and of itself a problem with respect to men being involved in entrepreneurial development? Is that something that needs to change? I am going to go back to the question again regarding the programs and whether or not there may not be a skew towards, creating programs for development of women, given the historical challenges that women have been confronted with, as opposed to men. I'm gonna go right back there again.
And I too have very different views to what people are expecting of females. One, and generally, the programs are skewed towards females.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking from this position, given that we are in the process of creating programs that will address male, because I believe that we have gone too far east and have ended up west.
Okay.
Oh,
There are a lot of programs that are there for females to do, because in a global sense, we believe that females are disadvantaged and they do not have as much access to things. So we've thrown a lot of programs at females in that sense. So therefore, because we keep looking at the females, we tend to forget that in order for our society to advance, there need to be equity. Notice I never said equality. There need to be equity. If we're doing something that is going to benefit one gender, there must be support in place so that both genders are advancing at an equal rate. So if you're doing a program for females, how are we helping the males to feel empowered to do what they need to do to ensure that society advances? I'm not saying that male must do something to empower the females, because the men also need support in order to get where they need to be. So if the man dropped out of school in order to get a job to take care of the family, how can we provide him with the support that he needs to skill up, to advance himself, so that as society advances, he is able to reach for higher and bigger roles that can then support the society? So we're giving females all of these access, and we are not taking care of the male. And one of the things that we are seeing as a result of not taking care of both gender is that we have increasing crime rate, we have increasing delinquency, we have increased, because men are trying to find out, where is my position in this world?
So I mean, what you have just pointed
Sorry,
to.
I feel strongly about this, sorry.
Yes, and I mean, equally so. And I see you, trying to vein Fabian, but what you've just said is that there are challenges both at the domestic level, where the home is pushing the male out and saying to him, go find a job. Go find a job, take care of the family. So the thinking, the cognitive, I mean, how he's thinking is very different to how the female is thinking. So she seems to have a bit more latitude, that's what you're saying, yes, to think about entrepreneurship, yes, from a domestic perspective, compared to a guy who is being driven to take on the responsibility as a man for, yes, taking care of this and taking care of that. Now, yes, you also pointed to the fact that, there's some high, crime statistics. My question is, shouldn't the wider family unit, I'm talking about mom, dad, sisters, brothers, and maybe even uncles and aunts, be paying more attention to helping men to find their place within the context of entrepreneurial development? I throw this out to any of you.
You remember that we are raised in a society, and the societal thinking and the societal norm does not allow us to be indoctrinated into that way of thinking.
But is it a way of thinking that we should accept in this modern age, and especially in an age where we are seeing so many men falling through the cracks? You want to take a little bite at
Carol,
this?
over to you, girl.
well, Fabian, and then maybe Carol.
Fabian looks like he's jumping at
no,
the
in terms of, you see, traditionally, you grew up in an extended family where, like you said, they were your aunts, they were uncles. But right now, that's not the case. You have single parent households you have right now. So that support and that encouragement, that kind of, it's not there.
It's not there for men. That's what you're saying.
It does not exist. And I didn't raise in that time, but just in my early years, there was the community also was involved in the life of the child also. That is non-existent. Nowadays, in fact, we had a recent unfortunate situation in St. Lucia where a child in a coastal village who is autistic, who was known by the entire community, left his home, walked 400 meters. He was seen by many persons. He walked to the beach and he has not been found. That would have never happened 40, 50 years ago. Someone would have just picked up the child and bring him back to the house. So we kind of lost our values. We don't, and like parents nowadays, they don't want other person's parents speaking to the children. So it's just the time. Times have changed. So everything is different.
I think we also have to recognize and accept that we are in the world, especially as little Caribbean people, we are in survival mode.
Yeah,
that's what everybody is trying to do to survive. It's almost as if we're clawing to get by, and that is a major challenge. That is a major challenge for us. So when we look at society as a whole, we are in some kind of desperate survival mode. When I go back to look at my father's life, if one person, it wasn't about one person getting out, it was about, okay,
the whole community.
Let's see, even if this person has the ability to get out, that person's role was to pull everybody along. And the society's role was to try and push, family's role, push. Okay, you're the one who's going to step out and lead this. Fine, lead this and pull us along with you. And we build out and go like that. The challenge is that we are in survival mode. And why women appear to do, and I use that, I say appear, because at the end of the day, we need each other, is because we have this natural maternal type thing going on where we're protective. Our instinct is to try and nurture and move on and move on and move on. But because everybody's in survival mode, the challenge is that we're not moving our entire communities and our entire societies along with us. So we are going to find ourselves, if we're not here already, in a rather precarious position, especially as small island developing states.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I have to vein with my mom again, because she too was an entrepreneur in her own right. And she did what was known then as smoking. She baked, she had her knitting needles and did such like all kind of things. But guess what? She did not sell a lot of what she made, you know. She gave it away and someone else gave to her. I mean, if that's not the context of social enterprise at work, where, you know, someone with a skill develops something and gives to someone, and someone else with another skill develops and gives. Look, I mean, persons who had what we call then grounds, we call them grounds. They had a little ground with some yams and potatoes, and my mom would always benefit from yams or potatoes. But she, as an industrious woman in the Caribbean, Black woman, was able to take what my dad earned, not as an entrepreneur, but as a laborer, a poor laborer. She took those resources and managed them in such a way that she created an enterprise in the home that could take care of the extended family so that we were not lacking. So the context of entrepreneurship, to my mind, cannot be narrowed to the idea of just the enterprise where the benefit derived is one of a financial, that is financial. It has to be broader. This is just me speaking, and it's broader to capture the wider societal impacts that can occur. That's a view that I have. I don't know, Julie, I see you're trying to weigh in on this as well.
Well, I just want to adding on that point where you mentioned that, you know, with entrepreneurship, sometimes I believe that we as a society devalue the quality of the resources that we have available. And oftentimes because, you know, with technological advancements, we see that a lot of our values are lost amidst all of this. And so parents these days feel like if they don't have some sort of financial contribution to make towards their child's effort, then they can't contribute anything at all. And right, and that just, you know, perhaps stifles any sort of nurturing into whatever potential that child could have shown if they would have said, okay, I cannot afford to perhaps give you $5,000 to start off your business, but I can share with you my wisdom and experiences to guide you and help you make whatever decisions or seek
or introduce you to John down the road who could give you something.
Exactly, you know, so parents these days, they value what it is that they can offer, and by doing so, miss the opportunity to nurture young persons in pursuing entrepreneurship.
Jerry, let me jump in here and tell you about an experience that I had over the Christmas holidays with She's Phenomenal. I usually do this Christmas market and musical, and it's primarily aimed at the ladies who are part of the group to earn. Other people can as well, but they get first bid. And a little girl called me because she had her mother's phone, who's a part of the group. So she read her mother's messages and realized that this thing was happening. And I got this message, and you could tell that it was very childlike. And I recognized it had to be the little girl. Basically, this message said, can I come and sell my things at your Christmas market and musical? I was like,
wow.
So I spoke to mommy, because obviously we adults, we should not be having those conversations. And mom told me, I did not know this precious little girl, she's 7 years old. She makes her own key rings.
Wow.
She paints these little pictures, and there's something else that she makes. And mom said, yeah, she told me about it, and she wants to know if she can come and sell. And I was like, okay, no problem. But it was the response from mom. And mom said, well, I was just going to bring her along for a good time, but if you can, I'm willing to get one of these spots. How much is a spot? And I said to myself, wait a minute, she's 7 years old. And it triggered me. How many other little people are out there that have these things that on? And I put out a clarion call to the ladies. And I decided that I would have this kiddie entrepreneur tent. I got somebody to sponsor the tent and give me some chairs and tables for them, because I was determined any young person, they had to be 16 and under, who decided that they were coming, they were not paying a cent for a space.
To the top of the class you go.
And it wasn't even about that. I was so, my mind
Impressed.
was blown by these children. I have a teacher who called me from a primary school, and she's like, Carol, I hope you're doing this for 2023. I have to get my head wrapped around it because I think I want to focus on these children. But when I looked at the parents behind them and the teachers as well, because they played a role, some parents couldn't make it on the Sunday evening, so the teacher came along with the parent support, and these children were selling from cookies to lip gloss, paintings. They were doing all kinds of amazing things. But the criteria was, one of the criteria, the child had to be able to speak with confidence on their project, because I don't want it to be mommy's project. Parents, the child had to be doing at least 85% of the actual work. Parents can assist. I am not talking to you parents on the day I'm talking to the child. I had from the 7-year-old to someone who was, she just turned 16. But that support that the parents gave them, the encouragement, the push without being, and there was a nice balance I realized with these parents. There was push without being overbearing.
Yes.
I think we had a question about someone asking about how they can support their child.
Correct, yes.
One of the things you can do is literally support. You may not be able to afford everything, but find out, Cardell said about mentorship. That's basically what you said. Find somebody down the road who knows. It's called mentorship. Find people. Jerry, listen, I'm terrible with money. I could talk my ear off, and yours. But if I want to learn how to manage my money and how to really look at money in a different way and saving and investing in my future, Jerry's the person I'm going to call in, like I did for my ladies. Find that mentor that can help you. It's not about areas where you see yourself as weak. It's about the area where you are strong enough to reach out to somebody else to assist your child. You will never know everything.
Yeah.
I will do a shameless plug right here. Barbados Youth Business Trust has programs for young person as young as 11.
Nice.
And we have 3 different types of mentoring. Progression mentoring, where we help you to make the decisions. So we talk to the child and we help them to understand where they want to go in their life, what their skills are, and those kind of things. Progression mentoring.
Nice.
We have exactly, so I can speak about all of us.
Well,
mentoring. We also have business mentoring, and we have specialists. So we have people that can help you to understand. You as the parents, we could talk to you, and then you will guide the children. Because what we are seeing in our working with the young people is that a lot of the times they're coming to us because they do not have anybody else supporting them.
And that therein lies,
so key.
Therein lies part of the challenge, that while growing up, some of us would have heard, go and look for a job. It's not necessarily the same language today. It's just that some of the support is not there to help drive those entrepreneurial enterprises. And it's not a shameless plug. It's a very necessary plug. That, you know, there is that type of support. And, you know, I applaud that program, Carol, where you actually give opportunity for that little 7-year-old to sell those key rings and such. Like, you know, I read a story sometime back and I posted that, I wrote on it as well. This youngster that was really great. I think it was with baking as well, Carol, like your dad was really great with baking. And his mom supported him. I think he's now 19 years old, but he has already made his first $1 million. He's already in the United States of America. He is already a millionaire, and it changed the trajectory of the circumstance of that home. And
the whole family.
The entire family. And there's so many other stories like that. I mean, the young people who at the age of 12 got into entrepreneurship. Do you know that, you know, there are a lot of $1 million businesses in the USA where people just had ideas. And those ideas were taken on board within the context of the home, and they were nurtured and developed, and they became major family enterprises supported by those within the context of the family. So yes, I think that answers very well the question that was posed regarding coping with, the best ways to help your child in their teenage years to cope with business. The question was also raised to cope with failures, but I believe that the failure element of it really lies in persons understanding that once you are going to work with this young entrepreneur, that you must accept that there's going to be some risk associated with it. There's another question that was raised there as well about ethnicity and the role it plays in response to entrepreneurship. So is there a question between, one ethnic group and another regarding entrepreneurship? I know that these things get a little touchy sometimes, so let's just explore, whether or not that also plays a part.
I think sometimes I might say this and get some lashes for it. Sometimes we do focus a lot on being victims.
Yes,
Yeah.
victim.
Yeah. Bearing in mind that I lived and worked in the UK as well. And some of the same things that we are challenged with, they are challenged with. The difference is where they are 95% white, Caucasian, we are 95% Black, or just under that. There are challenges, but we have to look at it in a holistic way. We might even say, and it is true, that we will see certain communities coming together because that is what they're accustomed to. That is who they are. When I lived in the UK, I lived on a street that had probably 7 Caucasian families, 3 Asian families, and I got comfortable 3 sets of houses behind me with a predominantly Black family. So yes, sometimes we do gravitate towards our own because of certain cultural nuances and things like that. Does it affect entrepreneurship? I think sometimes we do help, depending on where you are, you can help each other a little bit more, and people tend to be a little bit more, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. Does it put us at a serious disadvantage? I don't think so. I really don't think so, because businesses run by the Asian and Indian communities, sometimes they fail. Businesses run by white communities, sometimes they fail, as well as Black business, sometimes they fail. Sometimes we have to look at the success stories more. I think we should look at more of the success stories and what we can do. Some people are failing because they're not disciplined, because they don't show up. They have Instagram pages which they don't post prices on, and when you ask them a question about how can I get this product or this service, they don't answer you for 3 and 4 days. That is not an Indian or Asian families getting the most, or the Syrians or whomever getting the most. That is you being ill-disciplined as a business person. You're not business-like. So I think sometimes we have to strip away the whole ethnic thing from this and look at what we actually should be looking at. What works, what doesn't work, what programs are in place, how do I access programs? If I don't have access to a particular program, why, if I applied and I didn't get through, what were the actual reasons for it? I find too often we give up, we give up and say, man, they never give me this and they will never give me that. Sometimes people have the opportunity. I've known of situations where people go in for, say, a small business loan. They don't get through. The officer, the loans officer, tries to sit with them and tell them, explain, okay, this is why, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you do this? They're so frustrated. They're so angry. They've been so programmed to think that it's a you're against me and I'm against you type thing, that they don't go back and correct some of the things. I also know of cases where people who have been turned down, they sit with the loans officer and the loans officer tells them, listen, these are the areas that we need you to really focus on and things like that, or I need a bit more information about that. They go back and they work on it, even if it takes them 6 months. They're constantly in contact with the officer or the organization. They come back, they reapply, and boom, small business loan granted. So I think sometimes we need to really step back from it, unless there is some valid proof that you have, some real proof, as opposed to this is all in my head. I'm not saying that it does not happen, it does. But for the most part, we too often use it as a crutch.
Now, that brings to surface the question with respect to the construct of the home and what constitutes the informative, education regarding business. And my question to the entire panel is, should the construct of the home move towards home training with regards to entrepreneurship, just like we talk values in the home with respect to how you manage your neighbors and how you manage your schoolwork and how you manage all these other things? Should Caribbean homes, be it, one ethnic group or another group, but specifically Caribbean homes around, our traditional ethnic background, should there be more conversations in the home, and should there be included in the home some form of training to start prepping our children for entrepreneurship?
Yes.
Believe so.
Let me say the short answer, yes.
Yes.
Because a lot of the times there is the expectation that the first school is the home, but you also have to realize that people within the home may not know how to help the people within the home.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a continual education of not only the children in the home, but all members of society. A lot of the time before, you would have learned skills from being part of social groups or being part of church or being part of different things. But that is not as prevalent as it used to be. And so we need to figure out a way to get education back into the home so that learning can happen at all stages of our development.
Yeah, well said. Yes. I saw you were trying to weigh in on this as well, Vivian.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. As part of the programs interventions, that we include a component where there is parenting skills being taught. So yes, we may not be able to have it in the home, but we bring them onto these programs and we teach them those skills. And so it's another level of support that the parents, that to provide training to the parents, so they too now then could go and encourage their children and to support them in their businesses.
Yeah, Julie, yes.
Of course, the evangelist in me cannot help but refer to a famous proverb that says, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when he's older, he won't depart from it. But if the parents themselves don't really know or do not know how to train the child, then how exactly are they going to impart values and principles onto that child to shape them to be able to handle society in the way that they would be able to prepare themselves to take on the market and to be successful in their ventures? So I feel that the way that perhaps ethnicity may tie into the challenge of ethnicity may tie in there is that oftentimes we see a lot of Black families, because of the homes that they may have grown up into, be it a single parent family. Families they may have faced periods of time where there was abandonment because that parent would have spent all their time working and never really took the time out to stay home and teach them values, whereas you would see in a white home that these things are standard across their cultures. So I feel that that's where the challenge would have started, and right now we are seeing the effects of those values not being instituted within those homes.
Yes, yes. And I want to pose another question, and I particularly want to pose this to the two accountants, Cardell and Julianne. Is there value to establishing some financial measures for assessing parental or family support for entrepreneurship? And when I talk about financial, measures, my head as a financier as well and such like has gone down the road of providing positive proof of the value of parental and family support for business? Because we talked about parental support this evening, but we didn't talk about the wider family support. And I do know that there are a large number of persons who are in entrepreneurship that would say to you, but my family does not really support my business. And, you know, that, you know, in the context of, you know, ethnicity as well, you know, is not known among one group as opposed to another group. And that is something that needs to be taken into consideration. Is there any value, or is it even at all possible that we could come up with a KPI, a key performance indicator, or some kind of financial measure that says this entrepreneur supported by this family member or this family grouping was able to grow the business because of the emotional support, the psychological support, the whatever support? Can we actually, you know, come up with a measure for that? I'm just getting really a bit crazy and innovative here. Yes.
So Jerry, in order for us to be able to create such an indicator, there needs to be a baseline.
Right.
In the Caribbean, we have a paucity of information, meaning that there isn't much data collected across anywhere. Right. So when we're looking at the data in order to determine what is the background to all of this, we don't have a starting point. In order for us to create that indicator, if we are to start now, we have to go back into, okay, how did your family get to this stage? What did they do in order to get to this stage? And one of the things that in the Caribbean we see a lot is that a lot of the times there are rifts in the family. So we don't know what grandfather did, because I have, what you do again? I diss them, I don't talk to them, I don't talk to them, I don't know nothing about what they did. So getting the relevant information drawn out is lacking because we don't have that close type of relationship that used to be present. I would love it if we're able to say that as a family, we were able to move from 100 air to 1,000 air, and this is how we got here. I would love it to say that my family is willing to invest $5 in my idea, noting that they would be silent investors and they are willing to support me by doing X, Y, and Z. But a lot of the times what we see is that people who are coming to us are really at the point of subsistence. So I am doing this because my family has no other way of taking care of himself. And right. I am only one, and then my brother is going to come because he again cannot get the support to do what. So, but then one would get out and that one would forget about the rest.
Again, home training.
Home training.
Whether or not we really need to introduce programs. And this is where the St. Lucia Business Trust, the Dominica Business Trust, the Barbados Youth Business Trust, you know,
Youth Business Trust, Trinidad and Tobago.
Where all the youth business trusts need to probably start looking at programs that are not only directed towards the entrepreneur, but directed towards family members.
Societal building.
That's right. So that this idea of community is reinforced. And you know, one of the things that Carol said at the outset is that, and I know today that her dad established the business from a position of poverty and necessity.
Correct.
And that when he set up that business, he set it up with the idea of helping the community and also helping his mother who was struggling. The business 59 years later is still surviving. Weighing on this, Julie, could you give us your feedback on this?
My feedback, well, essentially, I want to say that I will go back to my point where I mentioned that oftentimes parents devalue the kind of contribution that they can make in their child. It takes something as simple as, okay, I identify that you have artistic skills, you love to draw, you love to paint, I buy you a canvas. Or I see that there's a school who that focuses on arts, I'm gonna register you, and then maybe I may not have enough money to pay for the entire year, but I will work it out as it goes along. And really and truly, the programs that we have, what I've seen, and to my amazement, is that when we hosted our small business assistance facility program back in December at the Dominican Business Trust, and a parent came in and she asked about the program and what it is that it offers. And to my amazement, she came in to ask about it so that she could register her child who is a high schooler, so that that child could benefit from the content. Now, the programs are catered to persons from the ages of 18 and up. But of course, we saw that opportunity right there and the potential in that young child who's actually a baker. By the way, I've tasted her products. I tasted one of her cakes and it's awesome. And so right there, we did not deny her. We said, okay, you can register. And then the training program was held online. So that child actually came in, she participated, and she was able to benefit from the content. So it just takes something as simple as identifying a program that you could register your child in, buying some equipment. If it's cooking tools, it doesn't have to be a $5,000 investment at the start. You start somewhere, and then that child now having the passion for it and seeing that you've made the investments just at that small level will be encouraged to push themselves and find opportunities to expand on their efforts, and maybe even find some way to, okay, I've started my business, I'm gonna host a little expo right there. People can see the effort that child is making and the passion that they show towards it, and say, hey, I want to make an investment into your business. So right there, that child is now has been put on a course to even find ways for themselves to expand their business because of that initial support received from their parents.
So very well said. And I mean, the idea of just buying the notepad or buying equipment, simple equipment, all of that is equity that is going into the business. And that can be a measure as well, No, we are practically out of time, but
Jerry, can I add something here really, really quickly? I want to jump here real quick. When you were talking about teaching, I want one word came to mind: collaboration.
Collaboration.
We may not be able to get it done in every home, but look at the organizations represented here, just in these 5 tiles. That's it. Look at the organizations. Each one of us in our own sphere can reach X amount of people.
Yes.
That's right.
But all of us together
Can reach an exponential amount of people.
Can you imagine the homes that we can touch, the children that we can reach, the potential change that we can bring and get people excited about or open to? Because some people are excited and others are not even open to the possibility of entrepreneurship and what it can do for their family. So I think more collaboration is definitely needed in order to really change the way we do things in the Caribbean. I look at home first, Caribbean first.
Yes.
That's my final contribution.
Well, not quite just yet. I want to ask the question. And that, I mean, a very important point. And the pull out from that I'm getting is that there's the need for a very structured program that focuses on both the parental as well as the entrepreneurial development of business in the Caribbean. I'm almost hearing that so very clearly. But on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being the highest, where would you rank the value of parental support for entrepreneurial development in the Caribbean from your perspective? Fabian, on a scale of 1 to 7, what would you say would be, you know, from your perspective, hear me, from your perspective,
my perspective.
where would you rank parental support for entrepreneurial development in the Caribbean?
I think it is not even really about a number. I think it's high up there for sure. It's needed, definitely needed, that you have that support system coming from the parent side. And like I said, just looking at the programs I have been involved in, only one of them had that component. And it was actually Our Boys Matter. Is a program about boys who have at youth risk, but the males and the parents were brought on and to sharpen their parenting skills, and so they in turn could support those boys in entrepreneurship, and it's working well. But it's the only program that has that component. So from that, what I'm saying is that just based on the topic and just thinking about it, we need more of that.
You need more of it. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 7, give me just a rating, Julie. On a scale of 1 to 7, where would you rank, from your perspective, parental support?
Well, I will take the approach of going up the numerical scale. I would rank it as maybe a 4.
4.
And
Okay.
I'll say why. Because it starts off by the parents, firstly, that's where 1 comes into play, instituting proper principles and values in the home. And then secondly, well, we're going up the scale at level 2, that parent will then is then supposed to or should introduce the child to formal education and skills training programs. So that right there, you're cultivating that child to not just become or to move into entrepreneurship, but you're preparing them for the world of work and essentially being able to handle the market. And perhaps at level 3 would be making some sort of initial investment. Like I said, it doesn't have to be $5,000, but just in the form of, okay, you started off school, but then you really see you have a passion. Maybe you did culinary arts, and then you said, okay, I really see that you have a passion for cooking. I want to buy you some equipment so you can practice at home. That's where I would go at level 3, and then perhaps at level 4, once that child takes the initial stage and starts to develop their skills, the parent now has to come in to give ongoing support. It doesn't have to be financially, but just that child being able to rely on their expertise, their wisdom and experience, that will help push them into taking or being more confident as an entrepreneur and being able to manage whatever obstacles that they may face as they go along their journey. So everything else on the scale is up to that child, but knowing that the parent has set the foundation, I believe that will play a significant role in the success rate of an entrepreneurial venture.
Yes, thank you very much. I have one final question for you, because we are now at 7:35. We committed to 7:30, and we don't want to keep those who are participating. And is this, and just a brief response, if there was one thing you could change now to give better definition to the importance of parental family support for youth entrepreneurship, what would that be? You want to take that first, Cardell? If there's one thing you can change right now, to give greater support, family support to entrepreneurship, what would that be?
No, Jerry, you're giving me hard questions.
Okay, well, let's go to Fabian and we'll come back to you. Fabian looks as though he's ready to answer. That's a hard one for him as well. How about you, Carol?
That question.
If there was one thing that you would change right now to drive the idea or the definition of support, family support for entrepreneurship, what would that be?
I think I would approach it from where I sit, literally in my chair as a media professional, because we have some amazing reach that many people don't have. We have thousands and thousands of people listening to us. And I think that word that I talked about, collaboration, comes in. If we can get together with the stakeholders and corporate Barbados and come up with programs that can literally spend some time teaching and educating. And I'm not talking just like for me, POB, but we're talking about urban stations like HOT and those kind of stations where you have the demographics are different. So you create programs that educate about entrepreneurship and about parental support and bringing people out of their situations through that support and through entrepreneurship, where we collaborate and come up with some really engaging programs, not just boring things with people pulling figures and calling words that nobody can relate to. That real human to human contact, that real break it down for me. That is how I would approach it. That can change because you have the opportunity to reach more faster, but it calls for collaboration. It calls for some sponsorship because across the world, radio, like everywhere else, we need to make money. And you would have to have that collaboration where they say, okay, this is like a public service type thing. So you kind of work on your advertising rates or whatever. I would not like to hear my advertising manager hear me say this, but that I think is one thing that I would change. How much more we can do from the level of education and information and impact with the stakeholders to make a change, David. Just chip away at it. It's not going to happen overnight, but you can break down an entire concrete statue by chipping at it one bit at a time.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Carol. And that was your final word. How about you, Cardell? Go right on ahead.
So, haven't had time to think about it. I think one of the things that I would do in order to stress the importance of parental support is by starting to introduce support of young persons, not starting with supporting them for business, but supporting young people, starting programs that will help parents to understand that their opinion and their voice makes a difference in the life of their children. So start from young, because we recognize that parents are more interested in what is going on in their children's life, the younger the children are. So when we start those programs, similar programs to what Carol was talking about, when we start those programs younger, it helps to capitalize and concretize the importance of parenting in all aspects of the life of the young person, so that we can help them with their soft skill development, because that is where parental support is greatly needed. Helping the young person to make the right decision, to analyze information, to manage their time. Because I have a story of someone who said their parents taught them to be late all the time because they mirror what was learned in the home. So getting the parents to recognize their role in raising a successful adult.
Thank you so very much, Cardell. Fabian?
Yeah, I'd also like to add, based on what Carol said, like in just to add to what was said, like in those programs, in those interventions, you have stories of persons like her father, because in growing up, you like in St. Lucia, many of the businesses was, for example, Nicholas and Sons, Cardell Ferguson and Sons. We have none of those businesses anymore. So what, and that takes us back to, it was his family generation from generation managing that type of business. So we have to go do some case studies on those businesses and start talking about it, teach them in those programs, so persons will understand the different values that those persons had and how they pass on the knowledge and the experience to their children and all of those things to build back that passion, that drive in them.
Yes, thank you so very much, Fabian. Julie?
I'd just like to say briefly, within these very same programs that everyone would have spoken to, is that we should also seek to separate the idea that support must come in some sort of financial form, and
Right.
stress on the fact that these young people can definitely learn from the experiences and the wisdom of the parents, and let them feel more free, and let them feel that, or through those programs, teach them to be more open about sharing their experiences, so that these young people can learn from it and therefore apply it to address whatever it is that they may be facing, to deal with obstacles and challenges that they themselves may not be aware of how to handle. But just because they have that support system, being the parents and the home in general, then that could definitely positively impact the entrepreneurial pursuits.
Thank you so very much. You know, I close with this comment. I've spent many years in banking and finance, traversing the Caribbean. And one of the things that I have noted is that where entrepreneurship thrived, families also made significant progress. And where persons were just simply employed, the opportunities for development were somewhat curtailed. Now, that's not to say that, you know, someone employed that person's employed have not made great strides and done well. But there is evidence to show that when businesses have done well and have been supported and have been the subject of wider family support, that the opportunities for addressing issues of poverty and development and a whole lot of other social issues is addressed at the same time. One of the studies we did some time back was that of, you know, ownership. And what we saw is that as ownership or persons had a stake in the countries that they were living in, the level of crime went down, because they have a stake and they are prepared to protect that for which they have a stake in. Entrepreneurship is not just an idea that a child has. It's an opportunity for development. There was a man who started a business 59 years ago, and that's where we started this conversation this evening. And that business is still in operation. And it's a Caribbean business. And it has impacted and touched lives and communities. And it was started from the place of addressing poverty and necessity. I encourage us, as we go away from this conversation, to rethink how we manage this whole matter of entrepreneurship, especially among young people, because the wealth of the nations could very well be embedded in the hearts and the bosoms and the minds of young people with brilliant ideas that can just change the world. I want to thank our main presenter, Carol Toppin, for sharing with us so passionately part of her own journey. Thank you so very much, Carol. And I also want to say thank you to Cardell from the Barbados Youth Business Trust for your very valuable inputs as well. And so to Julianne from the Dominica Youth Business Trust and Fabian from the St. Lucia Business Trust. I believe that the platform has been set for how we can think and drive change in entrepreneurship this evening. Thank you so very much. And to those of you who joined us and stayed with us, even though we went past the time, thank you so very much. We will have this as a recording and we will send it out to you and to all who registered. And it will also be on our respective websites, the Dominica Youth Business Trust, the Barbados Youth Business Trust, etc., and the Caribbean Center for Organizational Excellence. Thank you so very much and have yourselves a very pleasant evening. Thank you. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.